Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first virtual town hall for employees here at Georgia Tech. It's part of a series of town halls we'll be doing over the course of this week and next, just to make sure we're communicating as openly as possible and helping answer as many questions as you might have during this uncertain time. We chose Microsoft Teams because we could accommodate more people. We did get questions submitted in advance and we'll be dealing with those first. But if you do have questions, please use the chat function and the Q&A function, and we will try to answer as many as we can. If we miss any, we'll post them afterwards on the Georgia Tech COVID-19 site. We'll start today with President Cabrera, and joining him will be Rafael Bras, Provost and EVP for Academic Affairs, Shawi Abdullah, EVP for Research, and Kelly Fox, EVP for Administration and Finance, as well as Kim Harrington, our Chief Human Resources Officer. With that, I'll get it right over to President Cabrera.
Thank you. Thank you, Renee. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for making time this morning to come together and share some thoughts about the current situation at Georgia Tech and our best idea of what's going to happen going forward. But let me start by sharing my thoughts with those of you who've been directly affected by the COVID-19 disease. I know that some of you have had cases at home. There have been some even painful cases in people in my own team. So my thoughts go to all of you who are dealing in a more personal level with the disease. Yesterday, of course, we had a record number of deaths nationwide, and it was a very tough reminder that this is a really dangerous disease, and that everything that we can do to protect ourselves and protect others, we absolutely need to do. And of course, we have all now heard many times the kinds of things that we each can do to stay safe. And I think it's never too much to remind all of us that anything we can do to stay away from other people, to being increasing social distance. Although I never liked that term, social distance. I think we should talk about physical distance, and yet try to use technology and other means to stay connected. All the measures of hygiene and washing our hands, staying at home as much as we can, and using protection whenever we are in proximity to others. I think it's always we need to remind ourselves that never to let the guard down, because this disease is still out there, and it is dangerous. I want to thank all of you for everything that you've done in the last month. I mean, it hasn't been anything but extraordinary what has happened in just a very short period of time. And I want to thank both those of you who are still on campus, because you have to be on campus because your work demands that you be on campus, and those of you who have managed to take your work home. We still need people on campus, and there's a number of us who have to be there to take care of students and provide basic services to the students that still are living on some of our dorms. Pardon me. We have people on campus and police running some basic services. Even running now a testing site in partnership with CVS that has dramatically increased the number of tests that can be conducted in Atlanta at any given day. We're doing about 1,000 tests, and that would not be possible without the presence of our police running the logistics. But I also want to thank those of you who are working from home. It's not easy to all of a sudden change. Do a U-turn and change the way you do the work, and somehow manage to deal with all the responsibilities and the issues at home with children and other folks that you need to take care of, and somehow get the work done. And always remember that those of you and those of us who can work from home, you're making not only yourself and your family safer, you're also making it safer for those of us who have to be on campus. Clearly, the most important strategy as we deal with the COVID-19 pandemic is and will continue to be to minimize density, to minimize the possibilities of entering into contact with other people. That is why we had to really move all of our instruction online so quickly. That's why we had to mobilize and help the majority of our students to leave campus. And as stressful as that process was, it was absolutely necessary. And I appreciate the work of all of you who took part in mobilizing all the resources to help all of our students leave campus when they did. Now, this is, and I won't sugarcoat it, this is perhaps one of the most complex situations that most of us have experienced in our lifetimes. And not just from the standpoint of dealing with the disease, which I think we're now sort of in a good place in trying to keep that curve from growing, but also in terms of the economic impact that the situation is likely to have. We already have had some record unemployment claims. Obviously, the new economic situation is impacting all sorts of businesses, and not just in tourism and hospitality, but in obviously in transportation and in retail, and we're going to see every day more and more announcements of businesses that have been impacted, or that is already having an effect in a decline in tax revenues collected by states, including, as we will probably see very soon, in the state of Georgia, that will have very likely an impact in the appropriation and investment that our state can make at in places like Georgia Tech, and of course there are lots of questions that remain about the future, about how the situation is going to evolve, and no one knows. I mean, we have lots of models. Some of the models done by our very colleagues in the faculty, but lots of questions remain open. We don't know when things may start being safe enough for us to return to campus, or when things will start being safe enough for us to return to residential instruction, or we don't even know whether there might be another wave after this first one is more under control. So lots of questions remain, and we have, we're going to have to be both planning and trying to identify and trying to look at what different scenarios might imply and be ready for them. But at the same time, we're going to have to be flexible enough to take one day at a time, to bring in as much information as we can, and to try to do the best we can to deal with the information that we have in each moment. And yet, with all this uncertainty and all both the health impact of the pandemic and also the economic impact of the pandemic, I have to tell you that I'm quite optimistic about our future. I feel like really, and with all the noise and the public discourse, at the end of the day, organizations like the Federal Reserve have come together. Congress has come together to provide stimulus in the economy, to try to provide a little bit of a stronger stimulus, but also safety net for people who may need help. But more important, more than what federal organizations or state organizations can do and are doing, I think my sense of optimism grows from a knowledge of the people that I get to work with every day. All of you on the phone, the ingenuity, the creativity, the entrepreneurship, the ability to be resourceful and to do what we need to do every single day. My optimism is based on what I have seen in the past month, and what it seemed at the time impossible. If anybody had asked me just 4 months ago, just hypothetically, could Georgia Tech overnight switch to teleworking and online instruction, really without notice? I would have said, no, it's impossible. We would need years of planning, and yet that's exactly what we together have done. And we have been able to deal with that. I think we're in pretty good shape with whatever lies ahead. So, as I said, at Georgia Tech, and I don't need to exaggerate this. I think the COVID-19 triggered really the biggest transformation and the fastest transformation in our operations that we have ever seen in our history since our founding. For the first time in our history, we don't have students taking classes on campus. All instruction is happening online. Most of us are working from distance. I mean, it's just remarkable the impact that it has had. And once again, I think it's, and I want to keep highlighting this. I want to thank all of you, because this happened through the work and the commitment and the responsibility and the innovation and the collaboration and the teamwork and the patience and the flexibility of absolutely everybody on our campus. We have accomplished what we have to react to at least this first phase of the pandemic. We have accomplished all of that together. And now, even though we're still even getting used to this new situation, our attention is beginning to pivot to the future, to what's going to happen in the next few months. At what point are we going to be in a situation to return to campus, which is probably not going to be a sort of a black and white situation. It's not going to be like all of a sudden we're gonna switch and go back to normal. It's probably going to require more of a phase-in approach, and we're trying to look at what those different scenarios may require from us. From an academic standpoint, at what point we're going to be able to return to residential instruction, we don't know yet, and whether or not at some point we may need to use some sort of hybrid approach, which is entirely possible. Operationally, what does it take for some of additional services to return to campus, and what does that mean in terms of cleaning and safety measures to make sure that those of us who need to go back to campus do that in an absolutely safe way. And also, we're turning our attention to our finances. As I said, there are lots of unknowns, but it is really hard not to expect that there will be a major impact. And I'll share some numbers in a minute. Very, very important, I think, as we again start thinking and planning on how we're going to go back to a normal situation and what's going to be the timing. And I think the values that have helped us be where we are today will continue to be absolutely essential going forward. And as you know, over the last 5 or 6 months, we engaged in a very broad, very inclusive process to craft a mission statement, to craft a new vision, but very importantly, to also lay out our values. And I've been, of course, working very closely in the process, but also reading the document very, very often. And I feel like as long as we stick to those values, we'll be in good shape. I mean, first and foremost, students are our top priority. We need to do whatever we can to not only keep our students safe, but also to make sure that they keep making progress academically, they keep learning and growing. That's ultimately our most important mission. We celebrate collaboration. What has happened, what continues to happen today would not be possible without everybody collaborating, without each of us trying to not only do our work, but help others do their work successfully. We champion innovation. I mean, just to look at how each of you has transformed their work, has taken their work home, how our faculty have transformed their teaching, their instruction, is just an incredible example of innovation. Our focus on well-being and not nurturing well-being, I mean, the safety of our community now and as we start returning, hopefully to campus in the next few months, is going to be absolutely top of mind. And we are responsible stewards, which are our values, and is going to be absolutely essential. It's always important, is going to be much more so now. So to give you an idea, our new Executive Vice President of Finance and Administration, Kelly Fox, who's on the line, and can help answer some questions later, and her team, they've been modeling what the financial impact of this COVID-19 pandemic has been and could potentially be. Right now, we have, at the very least, we have identified around $55 million of negative impact between now and June, this is basically already part of a done deal, and that includes sort of revenues in housing, dining, parking, transportation, lots of the services on campus, which we're not now charging anybody for. Declines in study abroad revenues in Georgia Tech Lorraine, declines in athletic revenue. When you add all of that, we have at the very least already a pretty immediate impact of $55 million. When we start projecting out again, you start having to make lots of assumptions, but it could be twice, it could be 3 times, it could be 4 times that much in terms of the impact that we're going to face over the next few months. Then, of course, there's the possibility of getting the real possibility that our appropriation, the investment that the state makes in our universities will be cut as well. If the state all of a sudden sees a significant decline in the tax that they collect, they're going to have to reduce their expenditure. So it is very likely that we may face something like that, even though we still don't have any concrete information from the state, but we need to be ready for that. Now, a piece of that may be compensated by federal stimulus money, and some of that money has already been announced as part of the CARE Act, as you may have followed. There's some amounts that have been already allocated to each university. In our case, we've been allocated about right now in the first phase about $10.5 million. Half of that is going to come in very immediately, but that half will be channeled directly to students in financial need. So that it's not that's not even money. The second half, which would be about a little over $5 million, may be able to help us buffer some of those expenses that we're having. But in any case, and hoping that the federal government will add more stimulus and more investment in higher education to compensate those hits, those amounts are unlikely to be able to compensate for all the declines in revenue. So I think it's fair that we all start getting ready for a scenario where during the next year we may likely be in a position to have to really cut expenses pretty drastically. And at that point, we need everybody on board. This is not, if we find ourselves in that probable scenario, this is not just a question for finance and administration colleagues to solve. It is an issue that requires all hands on deck, basically. I know some of you in the questions that were sent to me in advance, that there's a lot of questions about will there be layoffs, will there be furloughs. From my standpoint, I mean, we need to do everything that we can to keep our employment as intact, our existing workers, our existing employees, to try to protect that employment as much as we can, because the job market is not going to be there, and if we lose jobs, people are gonna suffer in a job market that is not in good shape. So we need to do everything that we can to avoid that, and that's why I emphasize that we need everybody to work hard to find every expense, every dollar counts, everything that we can do without, we should be doing without, until things stabilize and we have a better idea. So it's moving from the things that are good to have or important to have to the things that are absolutely necessary to have. And that way, with everybody's work, we can sort of minimize the probability that we need to do anything that will affect employment, which I said should be our very last option. I think as we move forward, we again, and I want to emphasize this again, that the very values and the attitudes, the strength, the innovativeness, the ingenuity, the flexibility, the patience that all of you have shown in the weeks until now are going to be, all those values, all those things are going to be even more important as we move forward. And I think all of you. I'll close with this, and then we'll deal with all the questions that you may want to us to address. But with just a thought about our mission and this process over the last 6 months, we one of the things that we did is we agreed on a mission statement, a very short mission statement that says we develop leaders who advance technology and improve the human condition. And And as I read that statement again and again, I realize that that mission has never been as important as it is today. I mean, when we're dealing with complex, such a complex situation as we are today in this pandemic, what's become very, very clear is that it is science and technology, it is innovations, it is business models that are going to help us deal with this. As demonstrated from faculty members who very quickly jumped in to design and to make personal protective equipment that has been distributed already to hospitals and healthcare workers in Georgia, and that is now in partnership with businesses is going to be distributed to many other healthcare providers throughout the nation, whether it's, again, engineering faculty who've been working on an easy to manufacture, low cost ventilator that may help save lives at home and around the world, whether it's alumni. I mean, the testing site that we are now running on campus, which is doing, as I said, about 1,000 rapid tests a day. This is done in a drive-through way. Patients don't need to leave the car. They do the sample themselves. They get the result in 5 or 10 minutes before they drive away. All that has been done in partnership with CVS Health, the chairman of which is a Georgia Tech alum. It is run by our police department. I mean, each solution requires people to be thinking about new technologies, new solutions, new business models, new partnerships, and collaboration with others. So it is indeed really a moment for us. An engineering faculty that was interviewed by the New York Times recently, who was working in some of these rapid response projects, said, there's not a better time to be an engineer. He happens to be an engineer, and I said, there's never been a more important time to be part of Georgia Tech. This is a place where we can make a difference and really help our entire community successfully deal with this pandemic. So let me pause there and return it back to Renee to see if you've been collecting other questions that you want us to address, and I'll make sure that maybe some of the other colleagues will have a chance to respond as well. Renee, back to you.
Thank you. So we have had, in addition to what was pre-submitted, we've had a few questions still along the same lines of what will be happening with staffing, or will there be furloughs? I know you've addressed it in what you just said. One of the questions, getting a little more specific, is many companies around Atlanta are offering voluntary leave without pay, reducing salaries by a certain percentage, furloughing or laying off staff, or offering early retirement. The ask is, what is on the table at this point in some of the things that we're looking at?
Well, I think that's a great question. And honestly, we need to, as I said earlier, we need to be looking at all possible mechanisms with the objective of, as I said, ensuring that we deal with this new economic reality while at the same time protecting as much as we can the employment of everybody at Georgia Tech right now. So that is the goal. And if getting to that goal requires any of the tools that you've mentioned or others, I think we ought to be open to everything. And I know that Kelly Fox is on the line as well, and I know she and Kim Harrington and HR and others have spent quite a bit of time thinking about these issues. So Kelly, you don't need to, but if you would like to add to this question, I think that'll be terrific.
Great. Well, I appreciate the question as well, and I think the important takeaway is that everything that we can do today to mitigate our expenses helps us with our long-term goal of maintaining our employment. So I encourage you to do just as President Cabrera has mentioned, which is really think about every expense that you're incurring and ensure that it is absolutely necessary right now. And as soon as we have more information, we are going to be getting it out to you all so that you can know both what the situation is we're dealing with and the thoughts around strategies to deal with it. Thank you.
Okay, so another question is very focused, a set of questions is very focused on if and when we return to work, what does that look like? So There's questions about the regular schedule for cleaning. What does that look like? Would Georgia Tech provide PPE for people who continue to go on campus or have to meet with people? And then will there be testing available, seeing that some people are asymptomatic and transmitting the virus?
Those are absolutely great questions, and in fact, these are central questions for the task force, the Georgia Tech task force. As you know, I asked our senior vice president and chief of staff, Frank Neville, to coordinate a pretty broad task force, and that task force is now pivoting from thinking about how do we deal with this very immediate needs to sort of the future. The absolute top concern for the task force is safety, is the health of our community. So all of those things that you mentioned are going to be absolutely essential. So we're looking at cleaning and disinfecting protocols. We're re-examining sort of from schedules to products to techniques to priorities in our cleaning schedules. We're looking at also distribution of personal protective equipment to people who are, because of their jobs, likely to be in more constant contact with others. Testing has proven to be a key tool in dealing with the pandemic, and not just in the U.S. but in other places. Of course, we're very proud, as I mentioned earlier, of being able to host the sort of the CVS testing site on our very campus, which has already helped a lot of people. We're getting about 7% positive cases apparently on average on the people that come through that testing site, which means that a lot of asymptomatic people, but people who may have concerns that they have been exposed or they may have been exposed to others, at least have a way to confirm that. And that's going to continue to be a key tool in dealing with the pandemic, both at Georgia Tech and the general community. So all the things that you mentioned are going to be absolutely top of mind. So every step that we make in returning to home is going to be based on our ability to put into place those measures to make sure that everybody is safe.
Okay, and so that leads to another group of questions about when that might be. So we know we've moved to distance learning for summer, and that begs the question from many people, has a decision been made that campus will stay closed until then or on modified operations until then? And are we supposed to continue working remotely as much as possible through the end of summer?
So yes, what we know for sure is that all instruction during the summer is going to be done online. Okay, that we know for sure. What we don't know yet is whether, and hopefully, as things start improving and as maybe the cases and the impact of the COVID-19 epidemic start being a little bit more under control, we may be able to start reopening some functions. So if anything happens during the summer, I suspect it's going to be more gradual than sudden. There might be some areas of research, for example, that require that people have access to campus, and we'll just prioritize what functions need to or should be coming online first. But for the time being, I think the best assumption is continue to assume that many of us are going to be working from a distance. But again, show the flexibility. I mean, we just don't have the answers. This is a situation that even the experts, as much as we look at their models, and there's still no clarity around when that might be likely to be the case. So, but the good news, I think, during the summer, if things improve, is that with instruction not happening on campus, I think it gives us a little bit more flexibility to start testing some of these systems, right? Of some of the protocols of cleaning, of personal protective equipment, and so on.
Okay, so moving to students, a question about a story that was on CNN this morning. They reported that several universities in the US, including Harvard and Boston University, are considering the possibility of doing fall 2020 online if needed. Is GT already considering that?
So So we are aware that some universities are looking into that, but even those universities that were mentioned by CNN and in the press, all they're saying is they are considering. They haven't made any decision yet because they don't have they have as sort of as little insight into the future as we have, or as much as we have. I mean, we're all sort of like drawing from the same sources. So I think what's important again is that we plan for different scenarios. That's the best we can do right now, is plan for different scenarios without assuming anything. So that's what I was saying earlier. That is, we need to be sort of humble about our ability to predict the future, but smart in terms of identifying what those scenarios might be, and so that we're ready to pull the right triggers as information starts being confirmed. As of now, all that has been decided at the state level, the university system level, is that we are online only for the summer. That's all we know right now.
Great. And maybe a question for Dr. Bras about the best way to get the information to communicate with students directly. We have a question that says, it's from someone who heads up the admissions for the Executive MBA program that's slated to start August 3rd. They're getting questions, they're not sure how to answer them. Where's the best place for them to go within the organization to get information? I know you do a daily update along with Dr. Abdullah. I know that's one place for people to look. Are there other resources for faculty on that front?
Well, good morning, everybody, and I hope everybody is well. The question is appropriate. Normally, we are pretty much in touch, for example, with the deans of every unit. So in many ways, the process remains the normal process. Deans meet with me and others in the decision team almost on a daily basis, formally twice a week. And any question of that nature can easily be routed to them, and it will get immediately a response. We put out every day a summary of information of anything that is new, and repeat anything that should be repeated, and directs people to the right resources. In the case of the Executive MBA, we in fact have dealt with several of those questions, and they have come directly and acted on quite fast by the college and by us once the dean brought them forward. So that is really the best approach.
Thank you. So another question for Dr. Bras, I'm just wondering, it came through as, I'm just wondering if there's been any consideration for tenure deadline extensions for assistant professors.
Yes, the answer is yes, and you will be getting a report to that effect. We in fact presented to the Faculty Executive Committee yesterday to finalize that decision. And it will still need some level of oversight and approval, but in essence, absolutely there will be modifications and mitigation put in place for tenure decisions. And you will hear very, very soon. Thank you.
Back to you, President Cabrera, a question that came through. Why did Georgia State University get $45 million when we only got $10 million? Were they impacted more than us?
No, we all got impacted similarly. However, the federal government decided for this first wave of monies that they're providing directly to higher education, they decided to distribute the money mostly through a function of how many Pell Grant recipients you serve, which is actually not a bad idea, not a bad policy to do. So because remember that this first wave of stimulus money from the federal government that comes through universities is not for universities themselves, it's for students who are in need. So a good a good idea to distribute that money is who gets more, is let's give more money to students, to universities that serve more Pell Grant recipients, more financially needy students. In Georgia, the university that serves the largest number of Pell Grant recipients is Georgia State, and that's why their allocation from this first wave is about 4 times as big as Georgia Tech. So it's that's how the numbers are. There might be, hopefully will be, other waves of stimulus money, and those new waves, I hope, will be done according to other criteria as well. But this one was actually not a bad way to do it.
Okay, and then looking at some of the work we've been doing to help solve the problem and solve the challenges. Question came in: GT is producing protective gear for first responders. Is it possible to provide a shield to employees who are requiring to work in close distances with others, or they feel like Lysol and gloves are not enough? So is there something more we could be providing on that front?
Yes, thank you for that question. And first, let me again recognize all the people that played a role in this incredibly rapid and effective response from Georgia Tech to produce face shields, and really it takes a village. And so I've personally witnessed it. I saw faculty and graduate students in the lab designing, making the first prototypes, taking those prototypes of face shields to local hospitals, getting direct feedback from nurses and doctors, coming back, redesigning using 3D printers and other techniques that we have in all of our maker spaces. We then received a even gift from our partners, thanks to, you may have seen the story, but our neighbors, Coca-Cola, delivered thousands of pounds of laminated plastic, which is used for the face shields. Thanks to our colleagues in maintenance, they were there to pick it up, to deliver it. And we've made a couple thousand ourselves on our campus. And then to make sure that we scaled up, then we made we found manufacturers in Georgia and made a partnership with them to make sure that we could increase the production from a few thousand to hundreds of thousands a week. And it is then likely with our designs. Our designs have been provided free of cost, sort of open source. Here's our design and go ahead and use it. We've made no money out of it, but now we have enabled a manufacturing company to produce and scale and produce for GMA and for FEMA and for others. So it's been just an absolutely incredible process to see and to see the whole community come together to make it a success. And yes, so I think what's important now, back to the spirit of the question, which is what happens internally. That's what the task force is doing. That's what the administration team is doing, is trying to look at each job currently on campus, plus all the jobs that are likely to come back into campus, and to look at exactly what protective equipment is needed. During the first wave of this, of course, as you know, there was the supply chains of this type of equipment were overwhelmed, and there was not enough. Still, there is not enough PPE to go around. So our first priority has been to collect all the PPE that we had. We've gone through every single lab. All the faculty have been so collaborative, and most of that has been given to GMA to be provided to local hospitals, because that's where the first priority is. But we do have some that stays on campus, and we will continue to monitor who needs it and how we're going to be able to provide it. And even though this is only slightly related, I think that Shawi Abdallah, our EVP of research, is on the line, and it would be great if you don't mind, Shawi, to share with us some of the other, maybe a couple of other projects that are underway where faculty are sort of leading the charge.
Yeah, thank you, Angel. So we're engaged actually in many activities to support both the state and the national level. I'll talk about a couple of them, or a few of them. So the face shields you already heard about, and as the president said, it's now being produced at the rate of they can make hundreds of thousands basically to the nation. They've already delivered something like 25,000 as at last count, and we're still making some of them ourselves, and we will have some for our employees when the need arises. We're making ventilators. We have a couple of designs of ventilators. We're trying to get some FDA approval. We're engaged in the testing, and I don't mean in the CVS testing, but actually the state. Initially, before we had the rapid testing, and it's still going on actually, for the labs that need to have testing using the PCR machines, we're actually coming up with reagents. Our faculty and researchers are creating new reagents. That was one of the supply chains that was disrupted. We have people working on disinfection, coming up with solutions for disinfection, and that one is actually being used in a GTRI, for example, but we're also trying to scale it up. That would be very, very beneficial for Georgia Tech. You heard about the modeling between the different groups. You know, we have folks in ISYE and physics and others who are working on modeling. We have people working on vaccines, actually. You know, they were working on flu vaccine, and now they pivoted to do this. And we're supporting the CDC and the state for at many levels in terms of either project management and others. GTRI has also been engaged at all levels with the CDC and with supporting many of these activities. So I'm probably missing about 10 other projects that I may not be aware of, but we've been engaged at all levels to support this effort.
Thanks, Dr. Abdallah. A few more questions about HR. So does the Families First Coronavirus Response Act affect GT non-closure emergency leave? Would you mind elaborating on how each of these affects Georgia Tech employees?
Well, if that's okay, let me see. I don't know if I'm live yet. Okay, no, I think you were right by. If Kelly Fox and Kim Harrington, who are on the line, I think it might be better for them to address this question.
So Kim, why don't you go ahead and take that one? Your audio is not working on this end, Kim.
That's so. Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Renee, for the opportunity. And so I'd like to speak about these two distinct benefits. And so the Georgia Tech non-closure emergency leave, really President Cabrera granted us approved a pay with leave and under certain situations. In this situation, when the work has been reduced, as you know, we're in reduced hours. And so when someone's work has been reduced, they are able to receive leave with pay. So this one is connected to the work. The Families First Coronavirus Response Act really relates to an individual and their ability to take sick leave or leave with pay in a situation where they themselves are ill or they're caring for someone that is ill. And so those, again, are two distinct benefits, one related to the work reduction and the other related to care or support or sick leave, also with pay, for someone that's in that situation. Please note there's a lot of complexity with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and HR would love to partner with you to apply that one appropriately. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. And then will an update be provided regarding the extension of non-closure emergency leave by May 2nd? Back to you, Kim, on that one, just to be real specific.
Perfect. Yes, as we've indicated that we are reviewing this, Georgia Tech looked at this in really a 30-day window. And so we are currently reviewing that and we'll provide an update to that, I'd say, by the end of the week. As President Cabrera talked about, we are in a very fluid space. And so we're monitoring this closely and sharing information that we have as we know it. So yes, we will provide an update on that very soon.
Great. And then we've got about 2 more questions before we move to closing remarks, but one of them is in the spirit of helping. So people are asking, is it possible to donate, for FTEs to donate their vacation or sick leave to others?
And so in that situation, that is a question that we've posed also with the University System of Georgia. We do have a shared leave program. And so we are looking at the rule set there to see if there's any flexibility enabling us to support each other in that way. So again, we'll provide more information on that one soon. That's a fantastic question.
And then back to you for the last question, President Cabrera, before we move to closing remarks. We had someone ask that, would you say that Georgia Tech is a stronger, more capable institution than it was 4 to 6 weeks ago?
Without a doubt, it is. And I am really convinced that this process, as painful and as stressful as it has been and will continue to be for the foreseeable future, I think we're going to come out from the other end really a stronger institution. And really, just even in small, very important details. I mean, our capacity, for example, to utilize technology to enrich our learning, even when we return to normal instruction. And now 100% of our faculty have experienced different technologies in different form of instruction. This is 100% of our faculty who are going to be thinking differently about how to interact with the students and how to work with them, even in a physical setting. We have been talking for a long time about telework, which some of our colleagues, some of employees of Georgia Tech had hoped to have more flexibility, and we were probably even at that point slow in adopting some of these changes, and now we have proven a lot of the work that can be done. We've also proven the sort of the limitations of telework, which are clear, but in many ways, this process has forced us to test ourselves, to push ourselves, to think creatively, to work in groups, to collaborate with one another, and I think to show to ourselves what we're capable of doing and accomplishing, and I do hope, I'm very confident that will be the case. That when we get back to campus, this experience will have shaped not just each of us individually, but each of us as a community, and we'll have a renewed sense of confidence into the future. So I'm not just saying that. I sense it, I live it, I experience it every day when I interact with my colleagues. I know the first few days we were a little bit nervous, and everybody was trying to do what we could. And I have seen every day, every week, how we're getting already stronger. So and that might be sort of the silver lining of this situation. It's also highlighting again, and if you look at all the cases and the many projects that Shawi Abdallah just shared with us, also has highlighted how important it is what we do. When you look at our alumni take charge and drive change, when you look at our faculty find new solutions, it is clear that the kind of work that we do, the reason why we exist, the reason why we get up in the morning and go to work, is absolutely essential for our society to deal with this and the other challenges that we're going to be absolutely facing in the future. So without a doubt, this pandemic will make us stronger. But meanwhile, we have to be extremely careful, okay? Because this is serious stuff. Sometimes I get a little concerned that we get used to this new situation and we may lower the guard or relax, and we should not. I mean, this stuff is dangerous, and as some of our very own colleagues have experienced very personally and very painfully, we have to continue to be alert and to try to be as safe as we possibly can.
Thank you. I think on that note, the last few questions are just about being able to continue to connect virtually, and then once this is through, continue to connect through town halls like this. And the question is, would this group be open to doing more of those in the future, during the crisis, and then after?
Well, I definitely, I'm in. I mean, I think whatever we can do to keep a sense of community, I think even others, the provost has been doing some of these meetings, and so has our EVP of Admin and Finance, Kelly Fox, and so has our EVPR, Shawi Abdallah, and I think these things are useful, but you be the judge. So let us know if we should be doing more of these types of interactions. Send your feedback to me, to Renee Kapkowski. If you have ideas on how to make it better and more effective, let us know. But absolutely, I think it's essential in any time of uncertainty and crisis like the one we're going through right now. Communication is absolutely essential. So whatever it is that we can do, will be there.
Great. Any other closing comments before we wind down with the logistics of the event?
Well, I didn't want to close on this, but I have noticed in the Q&A that there are a couple of questions that have received lots of sort of likes in terms of is there going to be a furlough, and if there is a furlough, will it change by level of salary and so on? And I think maybe I'll go back to my comments earlier on, which is our top objective has to make sure we preserve employment, right? And that we do whatever it is we can to be extremely careful with our expenditures so we can maintain our employment, so people don't have to lose their jobs. If that at some point requires some level of furloughs or reductions of any kind, if we get to that point, we'll have to do it in the best, fairest way we can. And one of those, obviously, in my experience in the past, I've had to unfortunately deal with a couple of these situations, and some of you have. I think do it in a progressive way to distribute, if you will, the load to. So that those who have more resources contribute more to the effort. I think that's a good way to do it. But that's right now, that's a little bit premature. We're not there yet. And back to the message that Kelly Fox shared with us today is let's all work together to preserve our cash, to preserve our resources, to be extremely conservative with our spending, sort of to minimize the likelihood that we may need to do anything else. That was not a great theme to end this on, but it is an important one because I know that people were providing lots of likes to those questions. But I think if we're ready to sort of wrap this up, and I don't know if any before I do, I don't know if any of our colleagues have any additional comment. Kelly, Kim, Shawi, or Rafael. Shawi says he's good. Okay. Well, go ahead, Rafael.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, echo what you've said. We are all extremely proud of what the staff, students, and faculty, everybody is under tremendous stress. Part of the success so far and in the future will be understanding that the other side is feeling the same way and has some of the similar problems. And some things are doing very, very well, but that doesn't mean that everything is perfect. I noticed that one of the questions asked about campuses in France and China, France will go by whatever the French government says, and they're still closed. But China is open, so there will be light at the end of this tunnel.
Thank you, Rafael. Well, with that, let me end where I started, which is by thanking all of you for what you've done in the past month. It's been just absolutely, it's been an honor to work with you. It's been inspiring to see what everybody is doing, and let's keep going at it. Let's apply our ingenuity, our innovation, our patience, our compassion with one another, our sense of collaboration and of hope in the future. I'm really proud to be your colleague and looking forward to more opportunities and looking forward to seeing you back on campus one day. Thank you very much. And thank you, Renee and the team for setting this up.
You're welcome. Thank you, President Cabrera, Dr. Bras, Dr. Abdallah, Kelly, and Kim. For those of you, if we did not get to answer your questions, we will be posting answers on the FAQ and the Georgia Tech COVID-19 site, and this will be recorded. I know there was a little bit of an echo that we were dealing with, and I know there were some individual connection challenges. Hopefully the recording will we'll even that out for you as well if you want to go back and hear any specific sections. We'll continue to do the best we can, working with our technology. We're trying out new platforms to try to accommodate as many of you as possible. In the meantime, have a wonderful day, and we will look for you at the next town hall. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.